I'm Talia Ricci. Tonight, a stretch of the 401 remains closed after a deadly and fiery crash.
And then all of a sudden I just saw a fireball and, I panicked, right? So I just stopped on the highway.
The collision involved two transport trucks and a passenger vehicle. We'll have the latest from the scene. Plus,
Anna's a fighter. She's fought for housing, for families, for workers, for communities.
mayoral candidate Anna Bilau gets a key endorsement just days before Toronto elects a new mayor. We take a look at whether that could change the race. And
this fundamental notion from 50 years ago that we need two levels of government, I think, is now outdated.
Why the mayor of Vaughan is directing city staff to look into separating from York Region. But we begin with breaking news from Mississauga, where a double shooting has left one person dead and another in hospital. It happened near Hurontario and Lakeshore shortly before 9 tonight. Police provided an update from the scene just minutes ago.
Officers were on scene within 4 minutes and located two victims suffering from apparent gunshot wounds. One of them was pronounced deceased on scene, an adult male, and an adult female was transported to hospital, and her condition as of an hour ago is stable and not life-threatening. In terms of suspect information, they are outstanding. It could be a suspect, it could be multiple suspects. We don't know at this time.
Police believe this was an isolated incident and there's no danger to the public. There is a heavy police presence in the area and streets have been taped off for the investigation. A busy stretch of the 401 through Pickering remains closed tonight. The highway was shut down late last night after a crash that left two drivers dead. Dale Manukduk has the latest from police and when the highway might reopen.
Dylan Muhammad was driving home on the 401 last night when an explosion erupted in front of him, his dash cam capturing the moment.
And then all of a sudden I just saw a fireball and, I panicked, right? So I just stopped on the highway and then I heard a little bit of like popping noises. So I thought maybe some more explosions were going to come. So I had to start, everybody started reversing on the highway.
According to police, the driver of a double fuel tanker transport truck was headed eastbound on the 401 approaching Brock Road when for an unknown reason he lost control, collided with the concrete center wall, sending the fuel tankers into the westbound lanes, which ruptured and exploded. Two vehicles heading westbound drove into the fire, setting them ablaze.
The drivers of the transport truck, the vehicle stopped. He was unable to get out in time. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. There was two other people in another passenger vehicle. They were able to get their vehicle stopped and they were able to escape their car before the fire consumed it completely.
The explosion sent shockwaves through the neighborhood as nearby residents saw the sky filled with fire and smoke.
It was very scary. We jumped out of our seat and we ran out to look quickly to see major fires.
I saw just orange. It was just massive fireball in the sky. I got out of my car and I actually felt the heat from the explosion, like on my face, on my body.
Gas and fuel leaking into the catch basins caused explosions in the sewer system. Black soot that covered the highway and overpass was swept away and washed off. Traffic was brought to a halt. Highway 401 shut down in both directions from Westney Road to Liverpool Road. Thousands of vehicles poured into side roads and residential areas.
It's taking so long, but everybody is having trouble, so this is, I don't know what to do.
I live at 6 kilometers from my job, put 45 minutes.
The Ministry of Transportation says it's still assessing damage and will release a reopening schedule when ready. Meanwhile, police have notified presumptive next of kin and family of the deceased and are still looking to speak with anyone who has information or video of the crash. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Pickering.
It was John Tory's sudden resignation earlier this year that threw Toronto into a mayoral by-election. Tonight, with the election just days away, Tory is wading into the race, endorsing Anna Bilau. Ali Chiasson has more.
Anna's a fighter. She's fought for housing, for families, for workers, for communities, and she will fight for everyone who comes to this city in search of hope and opportunity.
John Tory endorsing Anna Bilau may not be the biggest surprise since they collaborated often when Bilau was his deputy mayor. What may be more surprising is that he decided to weigh in at all. This by-election was called because Tory hastily resigned in February after it came to light that he had an affair with a staffer. Since then, he has been living under the radar to work on his family.
And as I said I would do, I've been working hard to make things better with them in light of some of the mistakes that I made.
On the sales of a Toronto Star endorsement, Bai Lau was happy to have another.
Listen, I welcome endorsements from everybody, especially the voters, and I will welcome endorsements until June 26th at 8 p.m.
But since this unexpected by-election is estimated to cost taxpayers about $13 million, I had to ask.
Endorse you, considering his questionable decisions got us into this expensive election. Why would you still accept that nod?
You know, I worked with John Tory for 8 years. We worked on many things that I'm very proud of.
Her opponents took aim at that record today, Mark Saunders saying the TTC, homelessness and congestion got as bad as they did under John Tory.
I'm voting for Mark Saunders.
When asked about Tory's endorsement, Ford brought up Olivia Chow.
If Olivia Chow gets in, it'll be unmitigated disaster. Taxes are going to go up 25 to 30%. When people can't afford the rent, can't afford mortgages now, businesses are going to be fleeing Toronto.
The other candidates seemingly unbothered.
I'm running with the support of Torontonians. So anybody who's just going to run because they want Doug Ford's support or John Tory's support, they're not there for Toronto. I'm going to take a stand for this city, and I'm going to make sure that Torontonians' voices are heard, rather than the establishment just continuing to support the establishment.
Out with the old, in with the new, says Mitzi Hunter.
I strongly don't believe this, that people want more of the same. And so I'm offering new solutions and different approaches and a fresh take on this city. And I'm continuing to talk to people in different parts of the city, and I'm hearing the same thing. And they're excited about the opportunity for change that June 26th brings.
You can put Olivia Chow in that unbothered category. She issued a statement saying, quote, "In this election, John Tory and Doug Ford are 2 votes. They don't get to decide the next mayor of our city. The people do." Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The mayor of Vaughan is looking to make his city independent from York Region. Vaughan City Council passed a motion for the city to look into a new model that could allow for a single tier of government.
This fundamental notion from 50 years ago that we need 2 levels of government, I think, is now outdated and, again, needs to be updated.
Del Duca says his city pays more than its share, with Vaughan paying 30% of York Region's budget. Del Duca envisions potentially a larger body to coordinate shared services such as police, public health, and roads, but no separate layer of government, which he says can slow things down, including housing. Premier Doug Ford today seemed receptive to a separation.
I understand why Mayor Del Duca would want that. He wants to be able to move forward on housing. They're paying a lot of fees up to the region. A lot of cities want their independence, and I don't blame them.
Ford says the province will name regional facilitators in the next few weeks for York and 5 other regions to look at whether the regional model is working. As for what comes next in Vaughan, city staff will look into a possible new model for the city with more independence and report back to City Council by the end of September. And here's a live look at the Toronto skyline, sitting at around 19 degrees after a balmy day. Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, what a fitting first day of summer.
Yeah, just some wonderful conditions that we experienced today for this first day of summer. And of course, just a reminder, yeah, we did it, the summer solstice. And essentially, it's that time of the year where the sun rises north of the equator and we kind of get the best or strongest sun angle coming our way. So it came in between 10:57 and 10:58 this morning, and the longest day of the year, 15 hours, 26 minutes and 33 seconds. We enjoyed that is until the sunset. Just 3 minutes after 9 o'clock. So yeah, after 9 o'clock. Well, nice to have those daylight hours so late into the evening. Some of the daytime highs, very summer-like. Even the nation's capital in the upper 20s. Toronto at 27, and Barrie enjoying that as well. And 29 for Windsor. And Windsor, that humidex value was up close to 35. It was not too bad through the GTA, although we did have some humidity. Now, tomorrow morning, we'll have clear conditions and sunshine, but then increasing cloudiness coming our way. I think this Those showers will probably hold off till we get overnight Thursday into Friday. I'm going to go into more detail on that coming up. 16 your low tonight and 25, a little bit cooler for tomorrow.
Thanks, Colette. The City of Toronto hosted a sunrise ceremony at City Hall this morning to mark National Indigenous Peoples Day. Participants got together at 5:30 a.m. on the longest day of the year to give thanks for all creation. The sunrise ceremony is held around a sacred fire. Elder Gary Sue of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation says the ceremony is a reminder to take care of nature.
When we come here, we're helping you to get back into the responsibility of looking after the earth in a good way.
Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey was also among the attendees. Last year, the ceremony was held virtually. Indigenous educators are reflecting on how their culture, traditions, and history are being taught in schools across Ontario. Some say there's been progress, but there's room for more work to be done. Meg Roberts has that story.
I learned nothing, absolutely nothing about Indigenous peoples in my K-12, or K-13 actually.
Robin Michaud can't remember having a single discussion about Indigenous history and culture throughout her entire school education in the first 15 years of her teaching career.
There was nobody around to help facilitate that learning for me. And the fact that I now get to be that change that I needed.
She says today's youth has a different experience due to progress made over the years. However, she says there's still something largely missing from the education system: Indigenous educators.
The difference it makes to even have one Indigenous teacher in the school, it's an absolute game changer.
On National Indigenous Peoples Day, Michaud was among a number of educators reflecting on the progress made in schools around Indigenous education, while also focusing on ways to make it better.
The responsibility that we have as Indigenous educators, it's nothing new, but it's exceptionally exciting that knowing that settler Canadians are now ready to engage in these conversations.
In recent years, she says residential schools have become a focus in the schools, an important part of history, she says, but not all of it.
We're not defined by residential schools, and so that can't be the only discourse and conversation that's on the table.
In April, a report from People for Education found nearly double the amount of Ontario secondary schools that responded to the survey offered Indigenous studies courses this year compared to the 2013 year. 14 school boards are replacing the compulsory grade 11 English course with an Indigenous focus course. And from 2012 to last year, the number of secondary schools offering Indigenous language programs increased from 11% to 20%.
A pendulum shift.
Although improving, Brant Barikoff wants to see that statistic increase.
It's exceptionally urgent that we have language education now and for our students and our youth, because it's not a guarantee that it's going to be here tomorrow.
For those who are looking to learn more about Indigenous culture and history, Brant Barikoff recommends seeking out literature written by Indigenous authors. Meg Roberts, CBC.
Welcome back. Ahead of the mayoral by-election on Monday, we're looking at issues that impact you the most. One of them is Toronto's housing plan. It has holes, and whoever is elected on June 26th will have to think of ways to fill them. Our Chris Glover takes a look at the scale of the problem and the innovative solutions that have worked in other cities.
Toronto's in a race to build more housing. Another 700,000 people are expected to live here by 2051. Imagine this tower is Toronto's housing plan. Right now, it's got holes, and we need ideas to fill them in. First up, homelessness. There are more than 10,000 people experiencing homelessness in the city. And while some in the city are still recovering from the damage of how we've dealt with tent encampments, a little village in Victoria, BC is a solution worth looking at. Built out of converted shipping containers, the Village for Unhoused People was extended twice. It worked so well. Meantime, LA's Tiny Homes Village has taken pressure off its crowded shelter system. Innovative solutions have been tested overseas, too. Take Cambridge, UK, where modular mini homes were touted as a huge success. And 3D printing technology is being used in India and parts of Africa to create low-cost homes quickly. Finland adopted a housing first strategy in 2008, where putting a roof over an unhoused person's head is seen as priority number one. Since then, the country's homeless rate has fallen by more than 30%, the only EU country to see its rate go down. Seems like a whole different level of urgency compared to here, where after months, if not years, of advocacy, just last month, Toronto Council declared homelessness a state of emergency. Another significant gap is affordable housing, a general concept where a home doesn't exceed 30% of somebody's monthly income. But the market is impossible right now. Average home prices wildly outpacing average salaries, and rents escalating at an alarming rate.
So Alberta is calling. Will you answer?
To stop the slow bleed to other cities, housing has to become affordable at every level. Now, to be clear, a lack of affordable housing isn't just a Toronto problem, but other cities seem to be solving it. Take Austria's capital, Vienna, where 62% of residents live in social housing, not just for low-income people, but a broad swath of the middle class, too. The extent of subsidized housing in Vienna makes it one of the most affordable major cities in the world. By far the biggest hole in Toronto is supply. Supply? Oh, did I mention supply?
Critics say it could further squeeze the city's housing supply.
Housing prices are expected to increase even more next year thanks to a continued low supply.
The investment is part of an effort to tackle the lack of housing supply.
Toronto's new supply target is 285,000 homes by 2031. To do it would mean the completion of 31,050 homes per year, roughly double the average number of units built annually between 2017 to 2021. Something called gentle intensification might help, like the newly allowed citywide multiplexes. In the past, converting a single home into up to 4 units could only be done in 12% of the city. Now, council has approved them in all residential zones. But they rely on people or developers to fork over lots of cash for a reno. And in other North American cities, changes like this are too recent to see if they've made a big difference. Another possibility is taking buildings already owned by the city and making housing part of them. In 2019, Vancouver's number 5 fire hall was rebuilt to include 31 affordable units for single mothers, with rents as low as $520 a month. How about all these new LRT stations along Eglinton? 2 to 3 stories of glass and air over the transit stop that could be housing. Hong Kong's transit authority built hundreds of thousands of units as it built station stops, and Paris put 650 homes on top of a revamped bus depot. What about turning to buildings the city doesn't own? In a post-COVID era with more people working at home, empty office buildings could help with housing supply. In downtown Calgary, a vacant 10-story building is being converted into 112 residential units. The city hopes with the help of an incentive program, more building owners will follow suit. Ditto in New York City, where the goal is to free up 136 million square feet of office space to convert into residential units. Big box and grocery stores like this are a potential housing windfall as well. A U of T report last year argued with low buildings and large footprints, converting Toronto stores of 6 retail locations could deliver nearly 70,000 housing units. But many even criticize Toronto's building pace. The city has one of the slowest housing approval rates in the country. On average, it takes 21 months to get an approval, partly because Toronto has fewer planners per capita than most regions, 53 per 1,000 housing starts, compared to 104 in Richmond Hill and 143 in Burlington. Houses sitting vacant in Toronto were thought to be a big problem as well. But the first year of Toronto's 1% vacant house tax found just 2,100 empty properties, failing to raise the expected $66 million city staff had hoped. Weird, because in Vancouver, the tax worked so well it's being raised to 5%. Since 2017, it's led to a 36% drop in vacant Vancouver properties and brought in more than $115 million. The frustrating thing with Toronto's housing crisis, the same problems keep getting identified, but the solutions we can't seem to agree on, and that is leaving Toronto with a shaky foundation.
Colette's back now with our extended forecast, and I wouldn't mind if this weather lasted into the weekend.
Yeah, let's get into that more extended forecast here and take a look at the weekend as well. But just starting you off with another look at some of the afternoon temperatures from today, including now northern Ontario. So Kapuskasing at 31, Moosonee 32, Pickle Lake taking the cake at 33 degrees, and even Windsor couldn't get there with a high of 29. So that heat carries on in northern Ontario, and one of the issues with that is, of course, how dry it is there, tinder dry, and any rain in the forecast, well, it's not exactly what we're looking for, like a widespread heavier rain. What we have tonight are clear skies overnight for the GTA and tomorrow morning, and then through the afternoon and evening hours, we will get into some of that increase in cloudiness. You see it stretching back not just towards Windsor, but up towards Sarnia as well. So we get into more overcast conditions, and then overnight Friday into the early morning hours, overnight Thursday into the early morning hours on Friday, we get into that chance of some showers starting to poke their nose in for the morning commute, and then more widely scattered by the time we get into the afternoon and stretching into cottage country as well. So that's where the rain kind of comes in as we get towards the end of the week, but it does linger, at least a chance lingers into the weekend. 5-day forecast is coming up here. I did just want to point out that tonight with the kind of wind change, that smoke into the forecast, and this is at surface level, been seeing it in the Kawarthas, that risk towards North Bay, Sudbury, and pushing into parts of cottage country. So be aware of that through the overnight tonight into tomorrow morning, that air quality deteriorating. Then it gets better for southern Ontario, but unfortunately we see it not looking so good into northern Ontario. Overnight temperatures having just a range. We'll probably dip down to 16 for Toronto, like I was saying, then up to 17 by 7 a.m., 19 for Ottawa tomorrow morning, 18 Windsor. Over towards Sarnia, 25 will be the high for tomorrow, and then Friday there are those showers moving in, scattered in nature, but Saturday I do have a chance of showers at least, not everywhere, not widespread, but locally you could get some thunderstorms and heavier downpours, and still a slight chance into Sunday as well.
Thanks, Colette. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.